All right. Welcome, listeners. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. This is episode 123, 123. The date is March 17th, 2021. And joining me again this week, 2 consecutive weeks, is my good friend, Ryan Cloutier. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks, Evan. Glad to be here again.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We're like friends and stuff. So this is like easy. You and I can just talk and people listen, and if they don't like it, you can just click the stop button on the recording, right? It's cool. I dig it. So anyway, it's today is it's Wednesday, and it is St. Patrick's Day. So for all the St. Patrick's Day people that do that St. Patrick's Day thing, happy St. Patrick's Day. For those of you who don't or take offense to it, just happy every day. Be happy today.
That's good. That's good advice all around. I think that's just sound advice. Try to be happy.
Yeah, right. Try to make somebody's life a little bit better. I know that's what, regardless of how much we complain or hold people accountable or other stuff, don't confuse that with us being unhappy or confuse that with us not caring about people. Because honestly, that's the whole reason we do this, right? This security work we do. Because we care about people.
It is. And we say it all the time, right? It's not about information. It's not about security. It's not about technology. It's about people. It's about life skills. You know?
Yeah, totally, man. So this past week, I've had some really good conversations, just like every week, man. And good experiences, awesome conversations, wonderful people. All these things, I think, inspire us to do the best, information security work we can, but they also give us topics for us to talk about, because there's themes in all this stuff. So the topics, we have a really good show, I think, scheduled today. We're going to start with talking about reason, the value in reasoning, the value in logic, where maybe it's, I don't know, you could almost make the case that in some places in our society, we've lost that ability to reason. But why is it so important to security? Why is it so important to life? We're going to draw the parallels between the two. And then we're going to talk about passwords. That's a great topic. Everybody likes talking passwords, right? Everybody loves passwords.
I like the game show Password. Do you remember that?
No, I don't, man.
That's fantastic. Yeah, if you ever find free time, which we know you won't, but if you do,
right,
go find it on the YouTube or on the Game Show Network. And the whole point of the game was you had to guess the password.
Aha, nice. Yeah. Creating a bunch of little hackers. I like it.
I'm pretty sure I dated myself. No, this is pre-computers. This is like back in the 60s.
Right. Nice. Well, we'll talk about passwords too, because I think a lot of times, us in security, we harp on these things. We don't like them either. I don't like passwords any more than the people I talk to about passwords. But I think we might miss occasionally why we even have passwords, why they're important. We miss what makes a good password versus a password. Using, again, back to reason and logic, there's a reason for it. Our job is not to make your life more difficult. Our job is to protect you as much as we can, from some risks. And then I thought we would talk about what you and I do, in protecting our passwords. What habits do we follow? And I'll be transparent, man. I'm a transparent kind of guy. I'm not perfect at this. Even 30 years of security, I'm not perfect.
No, you're a human. And one of the things we'll talk about when we get to that part is, what are some of the human traits that are inherent that make passwords so difficult for us?
Exactly. Yep. So we'll get through reason, we'll get through passwords. And I mean, seriously, we could talk about any one of these topics for an entire hour or maybe an entire day. But we'll move through that stuff pretty quickly. And then we'll talk about some mentions. Just want to mention when we get there, about, again, the FRSecure CISSP mentor programs coming up about a month from now. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. I want to talk about some developments about the S2Me, really exciting things happening with the S2Me. Some of our listeners may not even know what the hell I'm talking about when I say S2Me. You will, if you wait to the end. It's really cool and you want to know. Then we'll close out with two news things. I just got two articles to talk about for news. But that's our show today. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, I think so too, man.
I'm looking
All
forward
right, so
to it.
let's talk about reason. This came up in a conversation, like I said earlier, the conversations I have with people get me thinking about, what's wrong, what's right, what do we need to do to make things better. And so, in my own backyard, I live in Carver County, Minnesota, right? And the news this week in this neck of the woods is there's a new variant of coronavirus, and there's still this sense of panic, right? And so it got me thinking about, let's reason through this. Let's think through this, right? I'm not pro this or anti that. If I'm pro anything, I'm pro reason. Put the emotions aside for a minute and let's think through this together. But that conversation led to this whole other thing. Like, I'm talking to another security guy about this, and then I'm like, holy crap, this applies perfectly to what we do every day for a job.
Well, what I find interesting about the word reason is it's the root of another word, reasonable. Amen. And so when you're asking yourself, what's my whether it's information security, whether it's dealing with this COVID, reason comes down to two major pieces. What's my motivation? And is my reason reasonable? Because if I don't check my motivation, my reason may be out of line with reality. It may be out of line with what's good or practical. So for me personally, it's checking the motivation for the reason. And then it's checking that reason against what I consider to be reasonable. And just like in our world of information security, reasonable is one of those sticky terms that we throw around a lot, but doesn't have a clean cut definition. But I think generally speaking, we as a people have agreed that reasonable tends to fall within the middle of the scale, right? So whatever the issue is, there's going to be the extreme ends on either side. And we see this play out with COVID. We see this play out, right? You have extreme camps on either side. And then most of us fall in that reasonable place in the middle. So yeah, I think one of the questions we posed is, have we lost our ability to reason? And I think because we don't do the two things that I practice, I think it's because we're not checking our motivations first. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're checking to see if our reasons are reasonable. And so, yeah, I feel a little bit like we have as a whole, being a little bit of a blanket statement here, obviously, but I think we have started to lose our ability. And part of that is, the other piece of reason is debate. We've lost our ability to debate. We lose our ability to reason.
Right. Well, and I think, and I like to defend people too. I get why we are where we are. Things move so fast, right? You look at your calendar today, you look at all the stuff you need to take care of, right? And then you've got, bills to pay. You've got, if you have kids, you have kids to raise, you have, concerns about their health. I mean, there's a ton of things going on. And so we just jump, we go fast, we jump to things, assuming so many things. And I think we even assume the root. You mentioned the definition of reason, even the root definition of reason. So I'll give you, I have the advantage of having a computer sitting here right in front of me. So if you're in your car listening to this, you don't have this advantage. But the definition of reason is the power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. So the key words in that: logic, Logic is beautiful. I love logic. And I think that's one of the things that makes security people really good is their ability to use logic, because that's how computers operate. That's how programs operate. They only do what you tell them to do. They arrived at a conclusion only because something or somebody told it to arrive at that conclusion. So logic is beautiful. It follows a series of steps to get to a conclusion. Even we do that, right? With our ADD, you and I have this, common diagnosis of ADD. I get to places where I get, it may seem random to the person on the other side who's listening, but I got there through logic, believe it or not. There were a series of steps that got me there.
Yep. Well, and it's part of that is, I think, for us as those who have ADD, ADHD, is logic helps build structure.
Right.
And structure is so important to navigating this in a healthy way. And structure is so important to what we do in our work, right? So we have to have that logic. We have to have, and you're right, those of us that are true practitioners of the craft, not just those that maybe are in the business or sit in seats of authority in the business, but true practitioners of the craft, we have to be logical, because that's the only way we make sense of all of this. I've got 10,000, pieces of telemetry coming in. Which one's an indicator of compromise? How do I figure that out? What's the process behind that? So I think it's very important. And I wonder how many people take the time, especially when we're talking about, I'm gonna pick on CISOs, right? I'm gonna pick on CIOs for a second. How many of them truly take the time to go through that logic structure, to go through the rationale behind the decision?
Well, how many of them have the time sometimes?
This is true as well. And I'm an advocate of making time.
That's what's also, that's why one of the things, I say it takes in our industry to become a really, really good security person. 3 things, because I like simple too, right? When you can boil down these complex logical things into simple components, 3 things it takes to be a good security person: the intangibles, right? Either you have the gift or you don't have the gift. Either you're ethical and dependable or you're not. So one is the intangibles, the second is experience, and the third is education. So when you talk about having the time, people that have more experience can process through the logic much quicker than those who haven't. Right? I've been here before. I've seen this before. I know where this goes. I know how this works. Now, and that's one of the challenges with CISOs that don't have the necessary experience. They haven't been through this before. They can't think that quickly because they haven't seen it. It's not because they're dumb. It's not because there's a deficiency in the way they process information. You just never processed this information before. This is new. That's understandable, again. And you mentioned also, on the topic of logic, there's a pendulum, I think. So I've always thought of this as being 2-sided, right? You've got logic on one side. I'm making decisions based on pure logic. If you make a decision based solely on logic, I think you miss out potentially on the emotion piece, right? Logic and emotion seem to be somewhat opposed to each other, right? So you're on this pendulum. If you kind of like imagine it visually, logic on one side, emotion on the other. If I swing too far to one side or the other, like I make a completely emotional decision. Logic, got no logic, knee jerk, right? Done.
Right.
There might have been a little bit of logic sprinkled in there somewhere because your brain still, you can't just use one or the other solely. You're always influenced by one or the other, because you can also go solely on the logic side, because I have been accused. I like logic. But my wife has accused me sometimes of being, where's your emotion? Right? You're too damn logical. Bring it back a little bit.
Well, and that's nuance. For me, that's nuance. The emotional piece is the nuance piece.
Right.
Right. Because you're right. Human beings aren't just cut and dry. We don't just fit into this tight, neat little box. But I think even to your emotions, there's a certain degree of logic that can be applied. Right. I know for myself, as one who, deals with the mental health aspects of ADHD, I have to ask myself sometimes, why do I feel, right? So I have to take that emotion, that thought I'm having that's emotionally driven. And in order to properly process it in a healthy way, I do have to put that logic filter on top of it and say, is this a reasonable way to feel right now?
Right.
Well, if I still feel that way in a couple of days, is that still reasonable?
Yeah. And see, this is beautiful, because if logic is on one side and emotion is on the other, and it's really not possible without, I think, a disorder of some sort, mental disorder of some sort, I can't make purely emotional decisions. There is some logic sprinkled in. I also can't make purely logical decisions. There is some emotion sprinkled in. So let's take that to this thing we call information security, right? We were having a discussion, and I've had this discussion many times. Are we secure? Well, what the hell do you mean by that? What is secure to you?
What's your definition?
Right. And so, we've had this conversation with, business executives. Well, it's keep me out of the news. Well, I translate that in my logical brain to be keep me out of the news, meaning eliminate risk. That's the only way I could keep you out of the news. If there was zero risk, we were going to have a breach. Right. So going back to that pendulum, zero risk, not possible.
Right. Well, it's not, right. There is no, what's the old adage? The only secure computer is one that's powered off, been put in a chipper shredder, buried in concrete, dumped in the Marianas Trench. And even then, they'll find a way to get data off it.
The only way you can have zero risk is to not exist.
Right. And even then, that then presents the risk of not existing, right? It's
right.
But then I think that all too often
go to the other side of the spectrum too. The other side of the spectrum would be infinite risk. Also not possible.
Right.
So we define reason. Let's define risk. Risk is the likelihood of something bad happening and the impact if it did. Right. And so you do this balancing act. And the reason why this is so important is because in our craft, in information security, the job is not risk elimination.
Nope.
Stop chasing that. It will never happen. Right. It also isn't just putting your hands up and like assuming that everything's going to go to shit, because that also isn't going to happen. It's somewhere on that pendulum. So when I've had, and I was telling you the story about the CFO who, he was a peer of mine before, when I had a real job. Now I don't really have a real job. I just do stuff. But he would ask me every time, not every time, many times he would ask me, Evan, are we secure? Like, I don't know what that means. In my logical mind, secure is somewhere on the spectrum.
Right.
Somewhere on the spectrum between infinite risk and no risk. You're asking me for something definitive on where are we at on that spectrum.
Right? Well, and I think too, there's a desire to want to eliminate that risk. And by doing that, especially with a lot of the blinky light solutions out there, you end up introducing more risk than the risk you were trying to eliminate. Because to your point, you can't eliminate it. It's right. Going to always be there. It's why we have a term for it, residual risk, right? The risk that's left over after we've done literally everything we could possibly do, and we still have that residual risk. But I do think because of a lack of reasoning, when we're doing things like selecting solutions, when we're deciding how to attack these risks, what are we going to do about it? I think because we're not applying as much reason and logic to those decisions, I think a lot of times those decisions are more emotionally driven. Hey, I had a great sales call. I really feel good about this call, about this product. It made me feel like I'm doing my job well. It makes me feel right. I think a lot of times those purchase decisions are rooted in that, not pragmatic. What does this really do for me organizationally? What does this do for me from a risk management, mitigation, limitation perspective?
Right. Well, and this is,
I see it all the time.
right. And so you keyed in on two of my biggest beefs that if we could solve these problems, I think we would go a long way to solving lots of our problems in our industry. One is our misunderstanding or not understanding what the goal is. The goal is risk management. In order for me to understand risk management, I have to first assess risk, make risk decisions. It feels very mechanical the first time you do it, but going back to the reason for that experience thing, once you become experienced in this and you get over the uncomfortableness of it, it's second nature, right? When you see things around information security, it's like, that's probably a risk that I'm not willing to take, right? You make these risk decisions very quickly. You do assessments very quickly in your mind. Now, you have to go through the mechanical, papery, yes, no question, pain in the butt part first before you get there. But one is that's the goal, risk management, and people don't do risk management. The second pet peeve I have, or frustration in this industry, is the inability to put risk into context, right? We see CISOs do this all the time. We see other security practitioners do this all the time. You can eliminate a specific risk, maybe, in the whole grand scheme of risks that you need to manage, right? I eliminate that one risk at the expense of what? Right? And now let's take this, so that's security stuff. Now let's take this to life. I eliminate the risk of coronavirus, potentially, right? I lock myself in my house, I put a mask on, I totally isolate. That comes with a cost, right? That you didn't put all the other risks in the context, or maybe you did. Mental health issues, substance abuse issues, relationship issues, quality of life issues, on and on and on. Same thing happens in security, by the way. You focus on this one vulnerability, this one thing, you're no longer focusing on training and awareness. You're no longer focusing on governance. You're no longer focusing on logs, whatever.
So what you're telling me is if I focus on patching Exchange while becoming blind to everything else, you mean the bad guys might still be doing something bad while my attention is elsewhere?
Amen,
oh my
brother.
gosh, shocker.
Right? Well, and for us, now with the experience that we have, right, we can clearly say that, but obviously to other people in our industry, it's not obvious because they make this mistake continually. Because I think when we're confronted with a risk that we don't understand, we have usually one of two things that we go and do. One is we go ignorant. Not my problem. I don't care. I'm going to ignore it. I got security people who handle that. All right, well, that's wrong because this is yours to handle. This is your risk. These are your risk decisions. That's one thing. And I think another thing that we potentially do when we are confronted with a risk, we make ourselves victims because now I'm manipulated, right? I can be manipulated by fear. I can be manipulated by somebody who comes and tells me that they can fix something that maybe they can't, but I don't know any different because I didn't take the time to understand what it is that I'm trying to protect myself against. You know what I mean?
But and this goes back to my analog human, digital world and the incompatibility. I have a theory that we don't process the intangible risk of the digital world in the same part of the brain that we process physical risks. To your point about, experience can help with that, right? Because we've seen it, we kind of become those creatures of habit. The hot thing is hot is not good. We learn these habits. When we get into the digital world, we don't have this, we don't seem to have the same ability to look at the risk with our natural inherent risk center, right? As a human being, the reason you're alive today is because there's a part inside your brain that says risk. For example, if you're in a car right now and a semi-truck gets too close to you, you're going to feel that. There'll be a physiological response to that risk. We don't have that in the digital world. And I wonder how much of that plays a role.
I do have that in the digital world.
Well, you do, I do, Chris does. Like folks that are kind of wired our way, I think we do feel that. But the average person that I've interacted with in or out of doesn't see it the same way. And it takes that time to explain it. It takes reasoning with them. To walk them through this, to say, hey, here's a physical life risk. Yep, I get that. That makes sense. Now, let me do an analogy or a corollary to this digital. And then they go, oh, okay, aha, I get it now. But I don't think naturally it's there. I think it is something that you have to train. So I wonder if part of being a CISO is, taking some kind of exam to show that you can contextualize risk. There's got to be some kind of requirement, if you will, to demonstrate that ability. I know if I'm a CEO and I'm hiring a CISO, if I knew that CISO couldn't contextualize risk, and I understood that the lack of that ability put my business in danger, I would want a CISO who could contextualize risk. So I wonder how much of this is we haven't set the expectation. We haven't shown the value around that capability. Because if the CISOs started to know, hey, I have to be able to do that in order to be qualified for my job, I think that one kind of self-solves, on its own. Right. But it's setting that, but we haven't done the necessary groundwork to have those conversations yet. Most CEOs go, to your point earlier, well, I've got a CISO for that. I've got a security guy for that. This is not my problem because I don't understand that it's my problem.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so, when you mention, how the brain functions, it assures me, the fact that I do know people that can reason through this, the fact that I do know people who have learned this behavior. I wasn't born with, there's not something magical. There are certain things for sure that are unique and beautiful and magical in people, but that's not the things that are making me able to do things that other people can't with security. What makes it's a learned behavior. I didn't, fall out of my mother's womb and go, oh, that firewall is configured wrong.
Right. Right.
You had to learn this stuff. And just like I had to learn physical risks, right? I had a parent who told me, don't put your hand on top of the stove.
Right.
And even then, well, I don't know if I believe you, so I'm going to try it anyway. And damn, that hurt.
Yep.
But and that's in a car. I grew up in a car, in the backseat of my parents' car, watching them drive. I knew yellow light, green light, red light. I knew that, well, when that light turns yellow, I could see my father looking both ways, thinking, should I go? Should I stop? What's my speed? I mean, you can think through those things. It was a learned behavior. And I think we can do that here. We need more people to do it.
We do. And it is, and I go back to, is your reason reasonable? For myself, we'll talk on this COVID thing for a second, right? So for myself, as you well know, this has been a very challenging year for me, to the point of even maybe some minor personality change because of the constant at home and the shutdown nature of the way things have been around here. And so I took a quick little trip somewhere to get a taste of a life I used to have. And it was so good for me. It was so good for my mental health. It was so good. Now, did I make some risk decisions? Yes, I had to reason through this. I'm going to get on an airplane. Oh my God, this is like the scariest thing ever, right? And what about other people? I care about other people. Is my decision putting them at risk? And so as I thought through this, I said, well, everybody on the plane made the same risk decision I did. So I don't feel bad.
Or they're just risk ignorant.
Or they're risk, let me say it differently. Everyone on that plane decided to get on that plane, and with that came inherent risks, one of which could be COVID, one of which could be the engine starting on fire and the plane going down, right? So they inherently, we all chose, either consciously or subconsciously, to accept that risk. But by doing so, I traded one of true bad places mentally, of going to levels of depression and other things that are unhealthy. Or I could put a little bit of my physical health at risk potentially
Mhm.
to save my mental health from further deterioration. And as you also know, because that was so good for me, when I got back, I quickly realized I need some more of that. So I will again be going and getting some of that I need. And again, I'm going to be making trade-offs here and making these risk decisions. But the reality is the risk to my physical health right now is less concerning to me than the risk to my mental health to continue to operate in isolation, to continue to.
See, and you have the ability to put risk into context, right? Because you understand that physical health, mental health, and spiritual health are not inseparable.
Nope.
Just like information security, privacy, and safety are not inseparable.
They're the same thing, different names, slightly
Or
different.
at least they're very closely
but they're
related.
all same. Well, I say it this way: they're all parts of the same whole.
Right. And so, because I also went through the same thing, and that's why, when COVID first sort of broke last year, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not, I'm not a scientist like that. I'm a data guy. So I'm trying to make sense of this. Where's the reason and why we're doing what we're doing? What's the reason behind? Because some people will just jump and just think it's, well, you wear a mask because you don't get other people sick. You do this thing because a lot of people just kind of take what's fed to them, as opposed to let's use some reason to figure out what's reasonable, like to your point.
Right.
And so I did all the math I could think of. I'm also not a math genius, but so many of the things that we were doing didn't make logical sense to me. Not to say that there wasn't logical sense behind it. I don't know. It just didn't make logical sense to me. I couldn't make those connections in my brain. Call me, because another thing that I learned that it just drove home so consistently, and it still happens today, and it's maybe always happened, is people who can't defend their position do one of two things. They either change the subject or you attack my character. So when I tell you I don't understand the logic behind whatever, right? And something that's as touchy and fear-filled and misunderstood as a coronavirus pandemic that none of us have ever been through before, instead of engaging me in discussions about let's go down the path of talking logically, reasonably about this, normally what happens is I get attacked. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. I never said I'm an anti-vaxxer. I plan on getting the vaccine. I'm signed up to get the vaccine. I understand the logic behind getting a vaccine to protect myself from a virus. I get that one, right? And so you go forward to where we're at today after a year, and I'm still trying to make sense of things, certain things. I play by the rules, right? Because I do live in a society of rules.
Yep.
Right? Society says in the state I live in, there's a mask mandate. Well, this is where I live. I will wear my mask, right? We can talk about the logic and all that other stuff, trying to figure that stuff out. But another thing that frustrates me that I'm trying to figure out right now is you look at the state of California, who did diametrically opposed things to the state of Florida. Right? Take the politics out of it. Take the emotion out of it as much as you can. Use logic, use data. Why are the rates similar in one state versus the other state? Right? And there's all kinds of hypotheses, and I like those too, right? Because you might say, well, you've got greater population density in California than you do in Florida. Fine, let's go down that path. Let's understand that. Because I want to make sense of all of this as much as I can so that I'm not driven by fear. So I'm not a sheep who just does what somebody told me. Because believe it or not, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of people giving you information that don't have your best interests at heart. I know that.
Yeah, and we see that, to bring the fear aspect for a second back to information security and how that plays a role. a lot of folks today are very afraid of ransomware. They are very afraid of being in the news. There's very much an element of fear. And just like with the coronavirus, part of that is the way the media is handling certain things. Whenever we hear about cyber attacks and events, and a lot of times it's very inflammatory language. It's very pumped up and puffed up. And so if these leaders, that's where they're getting their take on things. Now they're in this fear position. So when a vendor comes in and says, "I got you," my thingy does all the magic. It's got invisible processes and quantum entangled wizards that will magically fight the hackers for you. Okay.
Yeah.
I say to myself, man, I'm afraid. And this person is the first person that said something that allowed me to start to anchor back to calm.
And they sounded credible, didn't they?
And they sounded credible. I needs me some of that. And that decision, again, because of the fear element, back to what we said previously, that's an emotionally driven decision. That is not a logic-based decision. A logic-based decision would be, how many threats do I see against my network daily? What are the types of threats? Where are they coming from? Are there commonalities? Now, taking that telemetry, that fact-based, logic-based data, and applying that to this solution I'm being offered that has, to quote Chris, numptits in it. When I do that, I go, well, that doesn't actually solve my problem.
Well, and there's the key.
That doesn't solve any of this stuff. That just gives me more stuff to look at and a busier screen that has all these false alerts.
But there's your key word, problem. What's the problem?
Correct.
Right. So logic would lead me, one, is there a problem? If there is a problem, what is the problem? And then the next question for me is it worth solving? I have other problems, believe it or not. I have lots and lots of problems. Is this the one to solve right now? Or is this one I can defer for later? And this is all part of risk management too, right? You can make those correlations between risk management and this same process. Do I have a problem? What problem, if so, what problem do I have? Where does it fit with all the other problems? And then how would I solve it? Right? That's a logical approach to life. That's a logical approach to kind of everything, right? Versus, oh shit, I have a problem. I better, without going, do I really have a problem? Because when you're driven by fear, you expose yourself to that, right? When you don't, and where does fear come from? Fear comes from failure to understand something. I'm not afraid of things I understand.
Right.
Well, I may
avoid
them because I don't want to take that risk. So don't confuse my avoidance with fear. There's logic behind the reason I avoided it.
Well, and there's logic behind your fear. Fear has kept our species alive till now. I mean, it's
also killed us.
It has, but traditionally, the fear of unknown, if we go back to our biologic roots, the fear of unknown is rooted in something in the bushes, made some noise, and that something might eat me. And I don't know what that something was. So I'm going to create distance between me and it until I have a chance to properly assess the situation. Even cavemen reason.
Understanding, right?
Yes, even cavemen reason. They'd say, oh, whoa, the bushes move. Well, is that dinner or are we dinner? I don't know. Let's back up a little bit. Let's assess the landscape. Ooh, that's a buffalo. Buffalo's good. That's dinner. Let's get it. We understand it. Ooh, what is that stripy thing that I've never seen before? Oh, it just ate my friend. Now we know. That's a tiger. We stay away from those, right? But I think in information security, we're still at a caveman status. We haven't yet understood the world we're standing inside of enough to know that when the bushes are rustling, whether it's dinner or whether we're going to be dinner. And I think that's a core part of why we're not able to effectively reason, is that we don't truly understand what we're standing in the middle of right now. We move so fast, and you and I talk about this all the time. We move so fast and we built up something. Take stock for a second and realize 25 years ago, life was very, very, very different.
Mhm.
The way we conducted ourselves. We went to the bank on a regular basis because, oh yeah, you had to. It was, I just watched a documentary about Blockbuster, the last Blockbuster, right? That whole part of life is gone now. That experience that we all shared of going and picking out a movie and going and just that whole process vaporized. Well, that didn't just go away. With that, so many other things went away. And now we're standing in this new world we've created, and we don't fully yet understand what we've done. And those CISOs that are responsible for those companies, well, they're just humans too, who are also standing in this new world, not fully understanding what we've done.
Right. Well, and so there's, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how do you fight, or how do you build better reason? How do you learn better reason? And I think the way you do it is you question everything. Why? I have, I was just talking to a really experienced CISO with lots and lots of years of experience. If I showed you his resume, this was Monday. If I show you his resume, you'd be like, damn, he knows what the hell he's doing. Well, he wants to leave the organization he's working at and wants to go somewhere else, right? And so, he's telling me about this, and I'm like, so where do you want to go? What are you looking for? Why?
Right.
And then I had another conversation that same day. So going back to these conversations with people lead to these types of discussions. I had another person who I said, he was saying what his goal was in this industry. He's relatively new. He says, I want to be a CISO. So I said, why? Why do you want to be a CISO?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, really, why? Why
Right.
would you want to be?
Right. And so I shared that discussion, and that discussion went on for a long time. And I shared that same discussion with another CISO friend of mine at a Fortune 100 company, awesome guy. And I said, did you ever question yourself, like, why do you want to be a CISO? He's like, oh my God, yeah, but it wasn't until I got here.
Right.
And he said,
I found out what I was really standing in.
Right. So I think the way you reason through things is, it's okay to question. It's okay to wonder. It's okay to ask why. Why are you telling me I need to do this? Why are you telling, why do I behave this way? Why am I making this recommendation? Why? All those whys, it's healthy to do that, because that provides a logical, reasonable foundation for why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Well, and what's interesting is it's a skill that you have in your youth that we somehow seem to lose the value of as we age. If you've ever met a child of a 5-year-old, take a 5-year-old. That is a basket of why. That every other word out of that child's mouth is why, but why, right? Because they're trying to build understanding of their world. And we in information security, I think, could learn a lot from having that 5-year-old mentality of curiosity and question, because I don't think we truly understand the world we're in right now. I think we've built it up, and it's so complex and it happens so fast that nobody has really taken the time to step back and take stock and go, whoa, we fundamentally changed everything. That means we move the risk from the physical world into the digital. We've created a bridge, where physical risks can have digital impacts and digital risks can have physical impacts. Great example is the data center that burned down in France. That was a physical event that has long-reaching digital impacts to the companies that didn't have good DR plans.
Well, see, and I grew up through this transition like you did. And so I've never been able to logically separate physical security from logical security. I've never been able to separate them, because when we talk about information security, what we're trying to protect originally and still today is information. Well, information comes in various forms. It's always come in a physical form. It's always come in a, not always, but it has always become in a logical form too, through storytelling and things that people would exchange in person-to-person networking. So I was never able to
separate them. I've never treated them as separate, you know?
Many people do, because they
Right.
didn't. So many folk don't understand how it works. I had a conversation the other day with a fairly well-educated security person who didn't really know near as much as the resume would have led you to believe, right? They were asking some questions that were like, wait a second, I thought you had these accreditations, so how could that still be an open question? And again, it's that whole rush to do it, and everything's become very niche. I mean, how many times in our careers have we run into a network security guy that I wouldn't let within 1,000 miles of an application? Mm-hmm. I've met an application security guy that I wouldn't let within 1,000,000 miles of my infrastructure. Mm-hmm. How many times? And if you were to ask an outside person, well, they're both the same security person, right? They work in information security, they work in IT. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. But those two humans have a vastly different understanding of risk profiles, how risk occurs. And I know I've run into the network guy that's so laser focused to the network that the network, it's that where the whole idea of perimeter security came from. And then, the app team just needs to do their job better. It's right. Not me, it's them. And then we had to create a whole separate industry, DevOps, to deal with that.
Right. Well, how often do we feel intimidated too? I mean, this is another bridge between information security and just everyday life. How often do we feel intimidated by asking why? Right? You're in a meeting. I mean, and, somebody says they want to do something to the infrastructure or whatever the thing is, right? And it's going to affect you and affect others. And so, but you're in this meeting with your peers and everything, and you're like, I got to save face, right? I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I
don't know. We shame curiosity. I don't know why we shame curiosity, but you're absolutely right. It's nobody wants to be the one to go, hey, I don't know. Even though the smartest person in the room, by the way, is the one that asks the most questions.
Or there's this lack of respect too, right? Because I may ask you the question why, and you take it as me challenging your authority, me challenging your decision making, when really you give me the benefit of the doubt. The reason I'm asking why is because I don't understand.
Right.
And it's okay to not understand. It's not okay to continually not understand, right? But the only way I'm going to get out of this not understanding bucket that I'm stuck in is to ask why, is to question, right? Take the same thing to life, right? I don't know if you've ever had a discussion with, I was talking this morning to Peter, and I was talking about Twitter, right? How comfortable do you feel about stating an opinion or questioning why on Twitter? If somebody says, say something about politics, for instance, say you got an anti-Trumper or you've got an anti-Bidener, doesn't matter which way you go, and they're touting whatever, and you ask, why do you feel that way? Why are you saying that? Oh my gosh, you will be ostracized. You might even get banned from Twitter for why? I don't understand. I'm not trying to spread disinformation or anything else. I don't get it. Help me, right? That's Twitter. The same thing happens when I talk to friends, potentially, if there's not that mutual respect, right? And ostracize me if you want. I'm traditionally a pretty conservative guy, right?
I would say, but not wacky conservative.
No,
I've known you for some time, and I can confidently say that yes, you're conservative, but you're not that wacky type of.
No. Well, and I say that because I want to be challenged. Is my worldview incorrect? Am I wrong in the way I'm thinking? Because when I engage with people like, and I'll use Peter. Peter's more liberal than me. I love Peter, right? Yeah. We're not going to let this get in the way of our relationship. I will ask him questions about why you feel the way you feel about certain things. He doesn't attack me for it. He explains it to me. I'm like, okay, good. And I'm not trying to change your mind either. I think if anything, I want to make sure that you can defend your position. You are using logic to come to the conclusion that you've come to, right? And so, and this stuff has to happen, right? We have to have these conversations, whether it be in life or over in information security. Why? Why are you asking me to change my password all the time? Why are you telling me I have to VPN all the time? Why are you, all these things that we're doing? Why? To what end? For what reason?
Well, and to that, before we move on to the password piece, because I think
Actually,
that's
we're going to do
a great
passwords
segue.
next week. I decided we're going to do passwords next week because this went longer than I expected.
Okay, perfect.
I love, by the way.
So, we asked the why. One thing that I have found is when answering someone's question about why, it needs to be meaningful to them if you want them to understand it. If you give them a why that only has meaning to you, right? So let's pick on vendors for a second. So why should I buy your product? Well, let me give you all the reasons I think you should buy my product, because my product does this cool thing that I care about, this cool thing that I care about, right? And so the why is coming from that perspective of the things I care. But if I want the person to really understand, I have to give an answer that is meaningful to that human. I use this when I'm talking to parents. Okay, so hey mom, hey dad, you need to do threat monitoring on your kid. Why? Well, let me explain a couple things. First, your kid's more likely to use their school email address to sign up for accounts that you don't know about. So this is a great way to check that trust you've given. That's a great way to stay on top of these things. If your child's account gets compromised, their future is potentially jeopardized. Their ability to get credit, their ability to have an identity that is not flagged on the no-fly list because it was used by the drug cartel as a false identity to move drugs around, right? You have to take the time to explain it in a way that matters to them. If you don't, then I just say, hey, mom and dad, you want to monitor your kids. No, I want to respect their privacy, right? So if I don't take the time, and if I just give them my why, hey, the boogeyman, right? If I give them my why, yeah, well, you know what? There's a lot of boogeymen and I don't have time for boogeymen right now. But if I take time to explain, potentially their future is jeopardized. Well, whoa, I'm their parent. The last thing I want is their future jeopardized. I'm now going to do everything in my power to gain understanding on this topic so that I can reason, because I want to keep my kids safe. And the same is true in information security, and if you are a vendor and you're selling a product and you can't help your customer understand why it matters to them, you're doing it wrong. You're part of the problem.
Well, and I think so. The advice I would give is, is to ask yourself why often. Get comfortable with that. Get comfortable with, why am I doing this? Why am I giving this advice? Why am I making this decision? Why am I leading in this way? Because that really opens yourself up for improvement. It does. It makes you a better person. It makes you a better leader. It makes you a better security person. It also makes me a better educator, right? I can explain to people why we do the things we do the way we do it. So as somebody who's out there doing things, question yourself, but also don't beat yourself up, right? That's a slippery slope. But question yourself, why all the time. And also as a questioner, get comfortable asking why. Now, the challenge, there's two things that I want to give for advice on that. If you're the person receiving the why, so I'm taking a stand, whether it be in politics, whether it be in security, whether it be in coronavirus, whatever, I'm taking a stand on something. Somebody asks me why, I become an answerer. Here's my advice to you. It's a door opener. It's not an attack. It's a door opener. It's an opportunity for me to share with you the reason I believe the things I believe. The reason why, there's reason again, the reason why I do what I do. It's an opportunity to make somebody else's life better, right? It's not an attack on me. Ask me why. Ask me why all the damn time, please. Maybe I don't even know why the hell I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I'm just wandering through life aimlessly. Don't let me do that. Ask me why.
Right.
So that's the answer. Now on the questioner side of things, I know how uncomfortable it can feel to ask somebody a question on especially a touchy subject that you might get your ass beat for it, right? But as a questioner, I want you to feel like this inside, that you are on the right path. It's okay, because people who can't defend their position with reason, that means that they're wandering, right? They can't defend themselves in terms of why they believe what they believe or why they're doing what they're doing. They respond in one of two ways. They either change the subject, right? So I want to talk to you about why. I'll take something touchy that's in the news right now. Why are the death rates and things in California the same or similar to those in Florida? Right? Now that's a touchy thing. People will either change the subject or they'll attack my character. So when you're asking that question and somebody does that to you, know that that's where it's at. It's okay.
Well, and I'm going to add to that, because I think there's a way to limit that happening. So if you just ask why without some color around your motivations for asking why, I think you do create a more accusatory type of question. I think if you say, I would love to gain a deeper understanding of why you believe what you believe and how you got there. Like I'm interested in really understanding this, and that's the motivation behind my why. I'm not questioning your authority. I'm not questioning the decisions you made. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm not calling into question you or your decision or saying that it's right or wrong. I may do that later, but right now I'm simply trying to gain understanding so that we can communicate better. And I think you do need those extra words. I do think you need to, especially if you're dealing with a personality that you know is going to be more resistive, or maybe they're just a caustic personality, and you know, but you shouldn't shy away from asking them why. But there's
on the answer
soften the ground a little bit.
Yeah, and on the answer side of things too, if you do get that question that does seem like it's challenging, ask that, right? Instead of just firing back some kind of like, escalating the things. If you get, hey, why do you feel that way? And you take that as like, are you questioning my authority? Ask that. Are you asking why because you really want to understand why? Or are you asking why because you don't think you think there's some deficiency in me, or this is some attack on my character? You can have these discussions when you have this basis of respect, right? I respect people enough to engage in this way, right? And I think especially now in the world we live in, we're going so damn fast. How you doing? I'm good, thanks. And then off they go.
Right.
Let's get a little more going, because we have, believe it, where we're heading, if you use logic and our experience that we've gained over the years in this industry, where we're heading is a very dark, bad place.
Yeah, it is. It's quite scary, actually.
It's going to make the pandemic look like a walk in the candy store.
Just if you could stop using Orwell and Black Mirror as your guideposts for the society that we're building, that'd be great. Just saying.
Please.
If you could just 5 minutes, just back away,
Right.
All
right.
No,
so
I agree.
Sorry, man. I need to move forward because I need to get this. You got a closing thing on that?
No, just to say, I think, again, the reason, what's your motivation behind it? Is your reason reasonable? Have you asked enough of the questions why in a respectful manner of yourself and of others? Yeah.
And here's the thing for me, and I'll leave this as a closing. It's okay to ask me why. Please ask me why. Ask me why about my political position. I don't care. Ask me why. It'd be nice if we knew each other a little bit first. Ask me why on, why I do security the way I do security. Ask me why. I need that too, if I'm going to become better. So, and maybe we can learn that. together. All right, so mentions real quick. I want to mention just the FRSecure CISSP mentor program that is coming. If you don't know where to find that, that's on FRSecure site. It's 100% free, will always be free. It's awesome this year. We've got, I don't know what the latest number is, but I think it's over 4,000 people that are signed up for that free training. I'm an instructor there. You are an instructor there, and Brad Nye is an instructor there. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a great program, and if you are looking to get your CISSP, take it. If you are just even curious to learn more about security in general, it's worth your time. You'll learn something. I'm excited to be part of it. I think it's great, and I love seeing all the folks whose lives we've touched. I think that's the best part about being an instructor.
Amen, brother. Well, and it's, yeah, man, that's why we're in this industry. We're here to serve. I'm here to make life better. The less you fight me, the more you align with me, probably the better we're all going to be, right? Because my heart is in the right place. I don't have all the answers, but man, I want to help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and to that point, S2Me, right? So we're going to mention for S2Me. So for those of you that don't know, one of the many things that we do at Security Studio and FRSecure to help the world be a better place is we provide real resources for people at no charge. And one of those is S2Me. This is a free personal risk assessment. Won't take you very much time at all to complete it. A couple things you're going to get by taking this assessment. You will gain a better understanding of your own personal risk habits. You will learn how to improve upon those and reduce the risk that you and your family are exposed to at home, as well as at work. The other thing that you're going to get is an amazing benefit is a free threat monitoring. So the email that you use to register for S2Me, we will then monitor for you going out onto the dark net and public net, looking for any data breach where your email is showing up. And if we find one, we push a notification to you. This is a $20 a month value that we give away absolutely free. So I do encourage you to check it out. If you've never done it before, do it. And if you're a leader of an organization or a security leader, it's a great way to start to assess your talent and see just how at risk your employees are. The companies that have a security culture are the companies that are least likely to be breached.
Yeah, exactly, man. And we built this, well before the pandemic, not really knowing the pandemic was coming, obviously, but knowing that people are creatures of habit.
I know when the pandemic was coming up, I would have bought stock in Johnson & Johnson.
Right. Yeah. But it's we built this because we knew that people are creatures of habit. The same security habits you have at home, the same ones you're bringing to work, and vice versa. So, and we know that we have this problem of teaching people, reaching people about information security risk management. Nobody is responsible for your security at home but you. Ultimately, it's yours, right? You can point fingers and blame everybody else that you want, but you're the one that installed that IoT device. You're the one who couldn't live without Google Home or Alexa or whatever else you plugged into your network. And even if they were responsible and you wanted to hold them responsible, meaning the people that sold you those things, how do you recover the innocence of a child? You've got a safety component here at home that you don't have anywhere else. If your child's been preyed upon online or whatever else happens, you can't get it back. It's gone. And so this is just very, very important. They're life skills. It's free. It'll always be free. Always, always, always be free to you. It's a risk management tool. It is an assessment, but there are recommendations on how to make things better. If we just told you all the things that were wrong, it didn't give you any tips to make it better, then we're useless. So it's https://s2me.io. That's the site. The exciting thing about S2Me is it's really, really, really exploding in terms of popularity. We talked to a really big telco provider, consumer telco provider. yesterday. They want to get, provide this as a standard bundle to all people, all their customers, which is like in the tens and hundreds of thousands. That's awesome. We have the state of North Dakota who made it available to all their citizens. That's awesome. We have, other big associations. One that's an association for people my age and older, that we're, working with to get it out to that population. I just got an email this morning about a fairly large bank that wants to make it available to their customers, and then also wants to, take it to their banking association, make it available to all those. Awesome, free, do it, no strings attached. I don't want anything. We'll co-brand it your stuff, right? At the cost it is to just co-brand it, right? We don't want this to be a moneymaker. We want this to be a problem solver.
Right.
So I'm preaching. I could preach all day about that stuff because, damn it, that's the whole reason I'm here. I'm not here.
And we are making a difference. And I can say that with all the confidence in the world that we are making a difference. And I hope those of you that are listening, that you're seeing this and taking it as an inspiration to make your own differences as well.
Right. Yeah. You and me and others of us like us, I'm not here for any other reason than I want to fix this. I hate seeing people taken advantage of. I don't want you to be taken advantage of anymore. Whether it's a business, whether you're a customer of a business, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a parent, I don't give two craps. And I don't care how much money I make. I don't care if I make any money. I would do this for free if I could figure out some way to feed this big body of mine.
Right.
But so that's our motivation. Get on it. It's yours, not mine. Not my responsibility. My responsibility is to give you the tools to try to help you solve some of these issues. It's your responsibility to use them.
Absolutely.
All right, so news, I got two quick news things. One is the Microsoft released, this is from gbhackers.com. I'm not going to go deep into either one of these. I just wanted you to be aware. Microsoft released a one-click exchange mitigation tool to mitigate recently disclosed proxy logon vulnerabilities. So if you've patched your Exchange server, you probably don't need the mitigation tool, but go and review, use the mitigation tool. It's a really significant, very much exposed vulnerability, because the thing is, you have to expose your mail server, right? It communicates with other mail servers on the internet. You can't close port 25 and expect that thing to work. So you need the mitigation. Get on it if you haven't already.
And if you're O365, give it time.
Right. My God. Yeah. Because again, no such thing as risk elimination. It doesn't matter if you're in the cloud. It doesn't matter if you're in your backyard. You have risk. So you better understand it. The second one is, and this one ticks me off because, again, I hate people taking advantage of other people. And, there may not be a more vulnerable market in our industry today than the education market. And this one comes from Malwarebytes. The FBI warns of increase in PYSA ransomware attacks targeting education. So educationers, reach out to somebody, reach out to us. Well, if you don't have the resources, we'll find some. I mean, if I have to stay up late and help, whatever, I don't want you to be at risk. I want to make sure that you know that you're well protected against ransomware attacks. We've got tons of resources. We've got a free ransomware readiness assessment that you might find a little over the top, but that's okay. You can reach out to us and we'll give you that. But man, it's out there and it's getting worse.
Yeah, and all I'd add to that is, if you are a small business or a K-12, limited resources, air gap backup, a good old fashioned, believe it or not, cheap, removable hard drive, back up your data, back up your system images, store it completely off the network It's cheap and it's a dirty solution, but it is highly effective.
Right. It's always funny how the simple solutions often are the most effective.
Yeah. I mean, it's, if you can do proper, redundancies, that's great. But if you've got nothing today, go to Best Buy, go to Micro Center, or wherever your local retail, or order it online, get a removable hard drive or a series of them, however your data footprint is, and move that stuff off the network. You'll thank yourself later when that ransomware event happens.
Right. And I'm a silver lining kind of guy too. So look for opportunities to educate your students, right? Engage your students in things like this. So, and I'm just as a hypothetical throwing out an example. Let's say you do tape backups, but you don't have the time to switch out tapes. You don't have time to do this or do that. Maybe this is an education opportunity. Maybe you can, talk to the school administration, figure out a way that maybe you can do kind of a training program with your students on this is how you use tapes. This is why tapes are important. And then let them do the tapes. Let them take the tapes out of the tape device and bring it to the vault and put in new tapes. You know what I mean? Engage.
Yeah. And there are districts today that do that with their high school students. It's part of their education program. And some of them actually work, part-time for the district getting paid. So if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to put you in touch with the schools I know that are doing this that can help you figure out what you could do to implement a program like that in your own district.
Love it. That's awesome. All right, let's wrap this thing up. We did run a little bit late, but man, it's always such a freaking good conversation. You and I could sit here and talk, I swear, for weeks straight, right? You'd have to bring my bacon in, I'd have to get my wife to bring the bacon in because I need to eat. I like eating bacon. But let's wrap up. So any shout outs this week? Anybody want to give a shout out to?
To the whole security studio team. They've done an amazing job this last week. I mean, they always do a great job, but this last week they've really, pulled it together. There's so much stuff going on and everybody's doing a great job of keeping all the spinning plates spinning. So definitely want to recognize just the team and just the whole team.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to give 2 shout outs. Actually, man, I'm going to give out 3. Shout out to you for, taking care of, business last week, while I was out, getting some good, much needed R&R, you kept the business running and improved in many, many places. So big shout out to you, man. And a shout out for stepping in the last couple of weeks for Brad.
Happy to, man. Happy to. It's all part of being part of the family.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to Brad. I know that the reason he's not here is not because he chose not to be. He's just got a lot of things going on right now. And I want to give a shout out to him in support. Love the guy and will always love the guy. So, you'll be hearing from him again real soon. And the third shout out I want to give is to John Harmon. I love the way he's running the FRSecure team and the FRSecure group. And I know what it's like to be a leader sometimes at the top of the, organization. It feels lonely to be that person because nobody else can relate. Right? You got all this stuff going on and you're like, who do I talk to? Shout out to him because not only is he leading that team amazingly well, but he's also engaged in a kind of peer president group that I think is just providing, amazing support for him. But you have to be aware enough to know that you need that support to go out and get that support.
Right.
So shout out to him. I got 3 shout outs. That was cool. I could keep going on shout outs too, by the way, but 3 is good enough. All right. So thank you to our listeners. Encourage you to send us stuff that you'd like us to read, like us to know about. There were things that we talked about on today's show that maybe you want more information on. We offered help in a number of different ways. Maybe if you missed, some of that, reach out to us by email. We will respond. I've gotten better at that. So email us at unsecurity@protonmail.com. If you like to socialize, give shout outs, man, spread the word, do whatever you need to do or can do, or ask us questions. We can maybe set a good example on how to interact on social media. But reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at Evan Francine.
Ryan is at CloutierSec. It's CLOUTIER Sec. Brad's at Brad Nye. You can find our companies there as well. That's all I got, man. Good show. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Do it again soon.
All right, brother.